Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to go over how I set up my PyCharm environment to run Webots projects. So the first thing I'm going to assume is that you've already installed Webots on your Mac OS, and specifically this is for Mac OS and PyCharm. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up Webots. That'll probably start up whatever you had last. So what I'm going to do here is do a file new project directory. Continue. Let's go ahead and set this up. I've got a sandbox directory. Let's do PyCharm Webots. That'll be my project. Go ahead and create that. Continue. Let's go ahead and add a rectangular arena. Let's name it. We'll call this the PyCharm Webots. Continue, and you can see it's going to create all these directories. So let's just check it out. So the sandbox PyCharm Webots. Yep, that looks good to me. And done. All right, first thing I usually typically do is increase the rectangular arena. So right now the floor size is 1.1. Let's just go to 3.3. Just make it a little bit bigger. Go ahead and save that, and remember to continually save during this process, because if you reset something or reset the simulation, you're going to lose all your changes. I'm going to use the Crazy Fly robot for this. So go ahead and hit the plus key, and I just go ahead and search for Crazy Fly. We'll go ahead and add that. While we're here, let's go ahead and create a controller. So over to File, New Robot Controller. Continue. We'll do Python, and I'll name this my Crazy Fly controller. Continue, and you can see it's going to put it in the sandbox, PyCharm Webots, controllers, my Crazy Fly controller, and in the Python file. And go ahead and open that up in the text editor that comes with Webots, but we're not going to really use this text editor. Let's go ahead and hit done. And at this point, we're all set to go with Webots. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Make sure you always save it. And I'm just going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to switch over to PyCharm, and we're going to do some setup in PyCharm. I'm going to start PyCharm from my terminal window. So I've created a terminal window, and I've changed directory to where we have the Webots project files. First thing I like to do is go ahead and create a Python virtual environment. So on the Mac, that's Python 3-m-venv. All right, that should create a local virtual environment. And then I'm going to go ahead and start up PyCharm from this directory. All right, so PyCharm has started up a project to set the local Python virtual environment, which I can see down here. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the controller. So this is the My Crazy Fly controller that we created in the Webots environment. And it's just a standard controller template, really doesn't do anything useful. But I want you to notice first that it can't actually find from controller import robot. So it doesn't know anything about the Webots Python packages. So let's go ahead and solve that. And what we have to do is add a content route pointing to the Webots installation where it has these Python bindings. So the first thing we'll do is go to the gear for settings, project structure, and we are going to add a content route. And the route we're looking for is we're going to go to Applications, Webots, Contents, lib, controller, and Python. Go ahead and add that. So then that'll add now a new content route, so it has more source that it can look at when it's trying to resolve some of these imports. Apply and OK. And there you can see it, the controller, it now knows about controller and robot. We can even command click into robot, and you can see the code that is part of the Webots installation. The other thing I want to point out is if you open up your PyCharm Webots project folder, you actually have two folders now. One content folder for your actual project, and the other one we just added, this Python one. This is where all of the Webots Python files are going to exist. So this is actually quite useful just in itself, so you can go in here and see what Webots is doing. But also when you're writing your code, you don't get these imports that are not found. All right, so after we've set up our content route to include the Webots code, we want to create a run configuration for this controller. And we want to set up a couple of very specific things. All right, so first we'll go to the run configuration at the top, and we'll run the current, or run debug configurations. We will add a Python run configuration. And the script is going to point to the controller script. So back to your project. Sandbox, PyCharm, controllers, crazy. There we go. That's the script we're going to want to run because we want to be able to run this controller against the Crazy Fly robot and do some debugging. Next thing we're going to need to do is add an environment variable. And for this one, we want to type capital DYLD underscore library underscore path. And we want to set that to where we installed Webots. So on a Mac, that's slash applications slash webots.app slash contents slash lib slash controller. So that's the environment variable we want to set there. And then we just want to check that the Webots home is set to slash applications webots.app. So those should be the two things we have to set up to be able to run our Webots controller. All right, go ahead and hit OK and apply and go ahead and hit OK. Now next, I'm actually going to go and grab the Crazy Fly controller code that they provide for us so we don't have to do all the typing. So let me go get that. Okay, so I opened up a browser and I went to github.com/bitcraze/crazyfly-simulation. And once I get there, I'm going to go into the simulator files, Webots, controllers, and I am going to grab the crazyfly underscore controller underscore py and go ahead and grab that Python file. I'm just going to go ahead and click on raw, do a select all and copy, go back to my PyCharm, and replace the contents of the standard template with that. Let's just go to the top, and you can see that because we set up the content route to point into the Webots Python files, we don't get any notification that these imports are not found, but we do get one that says from PID controller isn't found. So we want to grab one more file. Let me go back to the browser, and we want to go into the controllers shared, Python based, and I want to grab this PID controller py. And again, I'm going to select raw, grab it all, /copy, and I'm going to make a file inside of the controllers directory called basically that file. So this is going to be PID underscore controller, and I will copy these in here, and let me update this so that I don't need this import sys. This assumes you're downloading their particular repo, but I just happen to have that PID controller file right next to my controller. All right, so this should be all I need to do to run the Crazy Fly controller inside of PyCharm. I need to do one more thing, however. I need to create a script to kick off the Webots application as I'm sourcing this particular Python virtual environment. So when I kick off Webots, it has access to all of the files that I'm going to import from here. So let me go do that. And if you want to define this particular script yourself, it's not very complicated, but I have it as a gist. So if you want to go to youngsoul/run-webots.sh, that's where I keep this. Go ahead and select this, and let's create a new file. I'm going to call this run-webots.sh. While I am here, open a terminal. Let's change mod so I can execute this. Change mod +X on the run-webots.sh. I'm going to go ahead and copy these in. So what it's going to do is it's going to source this local Python virtual environment and then start up the Webots application. So anything we install into this particular project, any Python package, will be available to my controllers when I run it through Webots. So let's go ahead and start this. So in theory, we should just be able to type run-webots.sh. All right, but you'll notice I can't set a breakpoint, so we're not really running it from PyCharm just yet. So let's go ahead and stop this. So to actually get it to run from PyCharm itself, we need to go into the Crazyfly. The controller is set up to the default Crazyfly. So normally we would come through here and we'd say, let's go ahead and start the My Crazyfly controller. And remember, so now it's going to call the code out of our project. And let's see what happens if we do that. Ooh. So now when we try to actually execute the script that's running in our Python project, in our environment, notice it says no module named NumPy. That's because in our virtual environment, we didn't include NumPy yet. So now let's go back to our project. I'm going to go ahead and quit out of Webots. I don't need to save anything. So what I like to do is use pip tools, or you could just use regular pip or poetry, whatever you like to do. But so I'm going to pip install pip tools. Then I'm going to create a new requirements file. So pip tools likes to find one called requirements.in. So here I will include NumPy. And then down here I'm going to do a pip compile, which will look at what we have in the requirements.in file, generate a requirements.txt file for anything that's missing from our local environment, and create a requirements.txt. And then I run pip sync. Pip sync will look at what's inside the requirements.txt and make sure we sync it with our current local environment. So now we should have NumPy as part of our environment. So now if we run webots.sh, it will activate this Python virtual environment, which does have NumPy in it. So now this should work. So there we go. You can see it's flying. We didn't get the error message down here. And if I double check the Crazyfly, let's just make sure the controller, oh, it's still using the Crazyfly because I didn't save it. Okay. Stop that, reset the simulation. Let's go here, select my Crazyfly controller. Now let's go try to run this. Now it's trying to run the My Crazyfly controller. You can see it down here, but now we don't get the error. Because we've installed the packages that we need. But I'm still not able to set a breakpoint or do any debugging inside of PyCharm just yet. Okay, so the way we have to do that, I'm going to go ahead and reset this simulation. So the way you have to do that is you go to controller, and instead of actually selecting the controller to run, you select extern. So externally, we're going to be running this. So you can go ahead and start it. Let me just zoom in a little bit and I'll tip it up. And let's go ahead and start. I notice though, it doesn't actually start because the controller hasn't kicked off yet. But if we go over to PyCharm, select my controller down here, and because we've set up our run config and we've set up the library path and the environment variables, if I go ahead and run it from here, you'll notice now that it starts to execute. So that's cool. Now we're really kind of running this out of PyCharm. Let me go ahead and stop that, reset the simulation, come back over to PyCharm. And since we stopped it, we quit out of it. But now let's set a breakpoint. Let's say we would like to set a breakpoint right after we come out of the PID controller so we can see what the power values are. So now let's hit debug, and we're going to wait for the simulation to actually get started. So now I'm going to hit start, and it's going to start running it out of PyCharm. There we go, and it just hit the breakpoint. So let's go ahead and continue. So it's in this loop, and it's going to be in this loop for quite a bit here. So let's do this. Let's not suspend. Let's log and evaluate. Let's do print motor power. and we are going to print out the motor power every time we hit this breakpoint. So it's enabled, but we're not going to suspend. We're just going to evaluate this particular statement, and done. So now let's go ahead and continue. And so there you have it. We are now actually executing this out of PyCharm. Let's go ahead and tip this forward a little bit. And let's see if we can't come down. Let me bring this up to the front. There we go. Twist and turn. And so that's how you can do that. And if we want to set the breakpoint again, we could just do that, and it stopped right there. So now we're basically debugging this out of PyCharm. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed it.